I have a reputation at odds with the reality of who and what I am. This is peculiar, depressing, confusing to a lot of people, perhaps me most of all. So, how does a left anarchist, wildly progressive in the proper sense, libertine game designer, firmly ensconced in the bottom left-hand corner of the bottom left-hand quadrant of the political compass, end up with a reputation as Turbo Hitler? I wish I knew. This stuff blows up with somewhat random regularity when something slips through the social media echo prison I've been put into, or occurs in my friendship circle, and I become aware of it. Usually this takes the form of some Cenidarian asshole slurping out of the depths to spread an increasingly mythologized bunch of nonsense about me. The nonsense varies. Sometimes it's more serious than at other times, but what it all boils down to is that I disagree with people and that they can't separate their opinions from their quintessential selves. Other high crimes of mine apparently include practicing tolerance rather than just talking about it, disagreeing from a left-wing perspective with critical race theory, intersectionality, and more broadly grievance studies, treating people equally, which they say that they want, but they actually seem to want special exceptions based on their identity categories. And there's the idea that I'm racist or sexist, usually because I've called out bad actors who happen to be women or racial minorities, almost all of whom have turned out to be abusive and or creepers in the fullness of time. I wrote comedy books nearly 20 years ago, which don't necessarily meet the standards of today when it comes to being inoffensive. I write adult content RPGs. Gore, in particular, seems to stick in people's craw, and I play adult content RPGs, like Tabletopless. This is bad, apparently. I wrote a blog nearly 10 years ago in defense of free expression. This was apparently a bad thing as well. I supported an anti-censorship, pro-consumer movement the same way I fought the Satanic Panic, Jack Thompson, the Vampire Panic, and so on. Gamergate this time. But rather than trust or listen to me, people go with what they're told from the very people who were being called out by Gamergate. It goes on, up to and including an accusation of sexual harassment or assault, which appears to derive from mistaken identity and was originally put to bed and stopped back at a time when Google Plus was still a thing. It's all either bollocks, misunderstanding, mistaken identity, or seemingly willful attempts to mislead and misrepresent me. None of the positive stuff I do is ever remembered. So what can I do about this? Very little, other than vent. If you ignore it, the rumours and myths spread unchallenged. If you challenge it, your counter-arguments are blocked, muted, deleted, or somehow taken as evidence that you're guilty. What? If you keep your head down and keep doing good things like you always have, none of that gets traction, and people you've never heard of are primed to hate you when they do encounter you. If you make do with the friends you have left, who have different beliefs to you, but who you can tolerate and get on with, you suffer from guilt by association, or they're pressured to abandon you. If you sue, people band together, pay off whatever it is that you've been awarded against someone, with interest, so they end up profiting from it. And collectively, they just carry on slandering you, perhaps a little more carefully. I've been harassed, abused, and slandered by these sorts of people, conservative prudes, small c conservative, and insufferable pseudo-intellectuals, since 2010 or so. Isn't 10 fucking years long enough to hold a misinformed grudge? Now, there's people who've put more effort into harassing me, haranguing my friends, sabotaging my projects and charity work than they have their own relationships. This is not justified or healthy behaviour, and there's nothing I can do to stop them. The sense of betrayal and the unjustness of it all, the helplessness in the face of it, has driven me to the edge of suicide before now. If not outright betrayal, the cowardice and the lack of spine, the lack of benefit of the doubt from people I've known more than half my life has. At the same time, I've seen the harassment that people who do defend me or call themselves my friends suffer too. Some of that cowardice and betrayal is understandable due to the pressure, even if I'd never do it to anyone and have stood up against it. If you're of the right identity category, it seems that you can leverage the slightest bit of harassment, or simply that status, into success, whether you're worthy of it or not. Yet a decade-long campaign of hatred against me counts for nothing, it garners no sympathy, because, I think, white, cisgender, male, heterosexual, etc. it's just not a sexy story because I am those things. And mental illness and disability don't count when they're in proximity to these bad no-no categories. Is it remotely reasonable to harass someone for 10 years straight? To kink shame them? To send them hate notes and razor blades in the post directly following a suicide attempt? To demonize them for their friendships with sex workers, and to imply that that friendship is untoward or something's going on? To take the time and trouble to create multiple email and social media accounts through which to continue to harass someone after they buckle and block you? Is it reasonable to browbeat their friends into disowning them, to pretend to be them on social media, to force them out of collected anthologies of fiction or gaming material, to try and petition companies to never employ them or publish them or print what they make, so to sabotage their charity efforts made to memorialise their dead friend, to review bomb everything they do, to warn potential new clients, customers and friends, and to share block lists so that they don't ever get the opportunity to talk for themselves. To lie about something so serious as sexual harassment or assault just to smear someone. To call someone labels that are 180 degrees from who and what they are. To belittle and question and undermine someone's mental illness. I'd say no to all of these, but what the fuck can I do about it other than whine occasionally for a scant scintilla of catharsis? I'm genuinely asking. I seem to be expected to just lie back and let it happen. Whether or not I try to be calm and pleasant, or whether I lose my temper, it seems to make no difference. I would think that I am allowed to be angry after 10 years of this bullshit. Don't you? Why doesn't the living hell that I have been put through by these people who style themselves as woke activists for the most part, why doesn't that count for anything? Why don't their bad actions count for anything? And how do you fix it? Do I apologise? I've done nothing wrong. I have nothing to apologise for, and to do so would violate my principles. An apology should be meant, heartfelt, and you should have done something wrong worthy of apologising for before you do. Nor do apologies make any difference anyway. It's just blood in the water. Do I have to violate all my principles and standards to get along with people? Do I have to keep my trap shut until I can't stand to do so anymore? What? What is the answer here? And then to compound this latest round of nonsense, which has stressed me out, it looks like I've lost another friend. Well, it's been lost because they seem to have been entirely captured by this hypocritical woke philosophy. They're a sweetheart most of the time. They asked me to engage with them and gave me some materials on grievance studies that they have studied and which they seem to very much be a part of. They asked me to engage with them on that, so I did. And I backed off when they said it was too much and was overwhelming. But that was a big mistake, it seems. There was an abrupt about face after I did engage. Good reasons for that. But then I've been told all my life, and I've taken it to heart, not to allow prejudice and bigotry to lie uncommented. And it's extremely hard to turn that off, especially when someone who's told you not to engage with them because of their feelings ends up posting rather, well, let's be blunt, hateful screeds against your race or your gender or whatever else. I am triggering, it seems, because I won't let these racist screeds lie. These things are triggering to me, which is why I end up replying to them and pointing out the problems with them, usually calmly. But my feelings, my triggers don't count. Yeah, I try to let it pass, but when I see something wrong, I have to call it out. I refuse point blank to be held to account for what ancestors, not even my ancestors, did to someone else's ancestors. Original sin as a concept and an idea is unjust. The crimes of the father or grandfather or great-grandfather do not pass on to the son. Racism is bad, from any race toward any race, and should be pointed at and pointed out, whether it takes the form of the black Hebrew Israelites and their overt black supremacism, or the idea that all whites hold collective responsibility for all white history, or the more conventional racism of shaven-headed football hooligans screaming the N-word, and the same goes for sexism. What some of these people, these ancestors, did was wrong, but I am not them. Best I can tell, my ancestors were not those people either, save for some horrible stuff done to the Irish by Cromwellian ancestors, but I'm still not them. The people who did these horrible things in history are the same kind of people that they are today, the 1%, the upper echelon of society, less than 1% historically, driven to their exploitation of others by greed and inhumanity. All I share with them is skin colour, which is about the most fucking irrelevant thing about any individual that you can pick out. People like the ones that did this, they were wrong, and they're in the past. To hold me to account for the action of some rich cunt before I was born is also wrong, and a barrier to creating solidarity and improving things for everyone today. We could perhaps fix this fucked up society for everyone based on a metric of deprivation in the here and now, and a more equitable future for us all could be possible, but we can't do that when we're ground down and atomized by the corrosive pseudo-philosophy of grievance and intersectionality. Again, what to do here? Why is it that my feelings and my concerns don't matter one jot or tittle? Why is it that everyone else is free to call out racism and sexism that targets them, and I am not allowed to point out the racism and sexism that targets me and upsets me so deeply, all the more so for it being hypocritical? Why is this racism toward white people okay for some reason, or increasingly Asians and South Asians? Why is this sexism okay against men for some reason? Why am I accountable for what Colonel John Chivington did a century and a half ago on a different continent? Why am I responsible for every scintilla of prejudice in the past, but people aren't responsible for their own prejudice right now that targets me and people like me today? Good faith and mutual love and respect doesn't seem to cut through this, even when it's two-way. The politics of grievance, the pseudo-academic nonsense that comes out of this to justify racism, sexism and other prejudices is just too strong, even for people's love and friendship. My desire for equality and fairness that makes me an ally to the goals of many of these causes is also what triggers my objections. You can't have the one without the other. You can't have my love and support without my awareness of when you lapse into prejudice. My left-wing ideals, my anarchist ideals, inform my calling out of this nonsense. If I wasn't the kind of person who called this shit out, I'd never be an ally in the first place. But it also means I can't turn a blind eye when it occurs within the ranks of the people I'm allied with. But that is somehow, for some reason, unacceptable. And it makes the struggle feel hopeless and pointless. So again, what do you do? If you care about this stuff, if I didn't care, if I was the things I was told that I am, it would be so much easier. But it's the fact that I do that makes it impossible to go along to get along.